Warning, today's episode contains spoilers for The Last of Us Season 2, episodes 1 through 5. Be warned. Hello, my name is Jason Concepcion.
And I'm Rosie Knight.
And welcome back to X-Ray Vision, the podcast where we dive deep into your favorite shows, movies, comics, and pop culture, coming to you from IR Podcast, where we're bringing you 3 episodes a week, every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, plus news.
Plus news. In today's episode, we are going to that very strange, overly well-built, yes, I know it existed before, thank you, Discord, Jackson Hole Town Council meeting for a roundtable where we will be calling in our very own Last of Us Council to talk episodes 1 through 5.
Let's open this meeting of the Jackson Hole X-Ray Vision Council by introducing the council members. First up, our first super producer, Joelle Monique. Joelle, how are you?
Yo, very excited to talk about this very up and down season of The Last of Us. We got some high highs, some weird lows, and some interesting changes.
It's an uneven season. Who's next? Aaron Wong Kaufman. How are you doing, super producer?
I'm good. I was just smashing a pipe and some weird things came out, but I think it's okay to leave it. So I just decided to come here. I didn't wash my hands or anything, but we should be good.
That's fine.
That's normal in Jackson Hole.
And finally, our last super producer Carmen Laurent. How are you, Carmen?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm out here doing beauty services for people that need it in Jackson Hole. You know,
and they need it.
Yeah.
So. You're doing an important job.
Particularly hot cast of apocalyptic misfits. So.
We'll talk about that because someone will talk about
it.
Their Dyson Airwrap came with them.
Yeah. The Dyson Airwrap is like they have one in every house when they give you a free house.
Yeah.
In Jackson Hole, they also give you a Dyson Airwrap, and then an appointment with you, Carmen.
Right, of course. Yes, priorities.
All right, first up, let's talk about Rosie and I had fun talking about how we think we would have done in the Cordyceps apocalypse. So I'd love to hear from y'all. Would you have survived? And how would you have survived to make it to Jackson Hole and a sanctuary and a safety amongst a loving community that's also kind of the very hot community here at Jackson Hole?
Very sexy community.
Carmen, let's start with you. How do you think you would do?
If I'm being honest, I don't think I would have made it to Jackson Hole. I am known to be very high maintenance. I don't like getting dirty. I don't want to kill people. So I probably would have locked myself up in my apartment and just ingested as much marijuana as possible and just tried to.
That's definitely the X-Ray Vision way. We would have definitely had like the podcast pharmacy that would have kept us going. Joelle, how about you?
Pharmacy is crazy. We should not be prescribing anything to anybody.
Jackson Hole needs a pharmacist. Let's be real.
If we're talking surviving the way like Joel kicks off, death immediately. First of all, cookies, immediate downfall. Sandwiches were done.
Bread,
the flour would have killed me. But if by some miracle I didn't get the infected flour and I somehow make it to civilization, I'm going to be okay because I'm great at making friends. And listen, it seems like what you need to survive the apocalypse is the ability to develop strong friendships and then also be able to mediate those relationships. I'm great. Emotional intelligence is like through the roof. This is what I'm going to rely on to get me through. If we could just stick together and rely on like these, 7 people. In college, I lived in a 2-bedroom with 12 people for like a year.
Wow.
You'll learn how to like work with your fellow man under these conditions when no one's bringing in any money. It's just vodka and leftover pizzas every day.
Yeah.
I think I could survive to make it to a Jackson situation if that were to align.
And you get
Otherwise,
your own
immediate
house
death.
You get your Yeah.
Better
Honestly,
than what I'm currently
Well,
doing.
theoretically, you get your own house.
Yeah, theoretically. Also, I just want to say, like, I'm realizing now maybe it will be worth going through the Cordyceps apocalypse if we all get our own houses in Jackson Hole, because we ain't never
saying.
getting a house otherwise. So I'm like, maybe. Aaron, how about you? You seem
So I
like a
think-
nice, sweet guy. I don't know if it
Oh,
would happen.
thanks. That's so nice of you. I think a plus for me surviving is I don't like bread or pasta, so I would not eat it. Most likely.
Yeah,
But
that would have
then-
got me on day one.
Day
The-
one, I
the
would have to
negative-
eat some
Bread or
garlic bread
pasta.
and pasta with mushrooms, and I would
Oh.
be out. It would be dead.
I also don't like mushrooms. So the negative, though, yeah, I mean, like some mushrooms,
I'm
but in
kind of
general,
with you on that, Aaron. What is
while watching
happening?
this show, I like them less. The negative, though, is
understandable.
my vision is horrible. We talked about this. I have glasses, and if I were separated from my glasses, my daily contact lenses would only last me so long, and then I would be absolutely useless.
You'd be Velma.
Yes,
Very
100% in
Velma.
every way. If I were to make it to Jackson, I think I would do well because I like small communities and I like towns, and I grew up in the cold in a small town. I went to college in the cold in a small town. The only thing that would be negative, I think, is I don't like riding horses. So if I have to do patrol, I'd be in trouble with that. So
I would not be
It's like we're
willing
not
to-
sending you on patrol because of the eyesight thing, so
Perfect.
it's
Oh, yeah,
totally
perfect.
fine.
Yeah,
You could be
They're
in
like-
the kitchen, tasting the foods, tending
Just
cows.
do some painting or something.
I also-
Tell us what
as
to eat if
someone
you don't
in-
eat carbs.
I mean, protein and vegetables. But,
What?
And
Healthy.
fruit, yeah. But
So you're keto.
One thing I do love is like whenever I play a board game, I love trading. So I would love to be the person who's like, oh, you
Okay.
collected 2 Ziplocs full of Legos, and you collected
of
6
wheat.
bottles of beer. Boom! Then
There
here,
we go.
we can trade these things. So I would do well.
Aaron's
with that.
running the trading tree out
Okay,
here.
I like
love
that.
it.
He's
Yeah.
running the trading post. Okay, so something, I mean, it's quite clear, I think, from what we were just saying, but all of us are definitely, I think, more in, like, the group mentality of how we would survive this. But I think something that's very interesting about The Last of Us, especially this season, is there are a lot of kind of individual versus group. How would you survive the apocalypse? Obviously, first season is very like lone wolf and cub. It's just Joel and Ellie. He won't survive. And then second season becomes more about these communities or tribes or roving groups. How is that working for you, Joelle, as kind of a narrative change?
It's a challenge. You guys have spoken, and we've spoken a little bit off camera, off mic, about, what's it like post Joel? What's the show like if Joel's not here? What are we reacting to? What are we responding to? When we get to, what's Jeffrey's character? Irving? Ian? Starts with an I.
Isaac.
Isaac. We got there. Isaac is an incredible character who I immediately missed and was like, but you had such a great introduction, and where was he this episode? I need more time with Isaac. And I feel like we haven't gotten a great balance between these different factions. Not enough enough to know that I should be scared of both, enough to know that their conflict is one that goes way back and has no foreseeable end at this point in time, but not enough to be like, oh my gosh, when these two people are fighting, I'm so scared. I have no idea who's gonna win. I don't know who I want to win. I know it's very clear, like everybody else is strangers, and so that's really a challenge, I think. And then two, because I really like Ellie's storyline this season, but I do think the rise and fall and tension of it is not as strong as season 1, and because of that, you sort of just feel displaced a bit in the story, in that you're all over the place. You still care. Production design is still good. Costuming is still hitting. Performances are still there, but it feels like it's lacking sort of the deep emotional heart, like gut wrenching moments. I have moments where I'm like, ew, and moments of fear, but not moments of, oh my God, my poor heart. Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to make it through this? And I think that was sort of what a lot of people were connecting to in The Last of Us. And maybe it's that our own reality has driven that emotion so high that we are now like the balance is out of whack when we're watching it on the show, but it's difficult. Yeah. I'm sort of in the middle there, I guess.
Carmen, you are a non-game player, right? You and
Yes.
Aaron both. So would you
Yes.
guys talk a little bit about how you are enjoying this season? Because in the Discord, I have to say, our non-game player TV-only fans, they have actually been very positive about this season.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear you guys kind of talk about that a bit more.
I will say for myself, I feel a lot less emotionally invested in this season than I did the first season. I think the first season did a really good job of getting me like emotionally invested in the characters, even in the like I mean, of course, that bottle episode in the first season is the one that really was
Yeah.
like, oh, this show is awesome. And so I think in watching the second season, who I am watching with my boyfriend who has played the games. So I'm watching it with a game player who is like obsessed with the moments that are like so like he's obsessed with the moments that are like directly from the game. He's like, "Oh, this is so amazing. You know, this is directly from the game." And you know, yada yada yada. I kind of stand more where y'all do with like the song went on a little bit long. Certain things I'm starting to feel like, okay, that's not very realistic in a show that has kind of always previously been very, very realistic. So I am struggling a little bit more with the second season as a non-game watcher. I feel like this, I feel like it's made maybe a little bit more to appeal to the game players.
How about
Aaron,
you?
what about
Aaron?
you?
Yeah, that's interesting because, again, haven't played the second game, and I did feel like season one had these major action set pieces that felt right out of the game. Like the sniping from the tower, like there were things that just felt like, oh, as someone who's played video games my entire life, this feels like a video game scene. This season, it doesn't feel like these major set pieces are necessarily like, I can't imagine how the attack on Jackson Hole would have been in the game if it was at all. And I'm finding myself enjoying season two quite a bit, even without any point of reference for it. The individual versus group conversation, I think, is one that I have struggled with a little bit because I felt like season one was so beautifully focused on individuals, even within the groups. You find yourself having these horribly sad stories around the guy that they meet and his little brother. Like that is just so haunting. And then in this one, other than Isaac, I don't feel a strong connection to any individual within any of these new groups that's been introduced other than like I said, Isaac, but part of that is just because I know who plays him. And that seems like it's going to be a really important role. So I do think that while I love Dina, and I think like she brings this great energy to the show.
I agree.
And so I really like her introduction to the traveling unit of like at its core, this show's a road trip no matter what, and like we are once again with this great little buddy cop road trip, except it's just these two high school girls who are out for revenge to kill another high school girl kind of thing. Like, it's do revenge, but in zombie apocalypse. But so I think there have been things that I know people have had problems with based off the game. And I think having no context whatsoever, I have just enjoyed it more because it all just is like, oh, they're moving the story along here. There have been a few things that feel like, oh, they got here faster than I expected, but nothing feels like, oh, they're just pushing it to get to level 6 and now here we are, we have to do this to get to level 7 kind of thing. So I've enjoyed it, and maybe that is just because I haven't seen the video game.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say as a game player, and I like the show. I want to be clear that I like the show. It's just I thought that season 1 set an incredibly high bar that season 2 is not quite hitting. For me, it's kind of like I've seen it, when scenes unfold that are beat for beat like out of the game, it's a little bit like, well, I did this and I saw exactly this scene. I know exactly where it's going. And I thought that season 1, and again, your mileage may vary. Some people might be like, listen, The Last of Us 2 is the greatest piece of storytelling that's ever happened. And don't you dare change
Love that for
a
you.
Thing.
It's
right?
great that you're enjoying
fine.
it.
That's fine. I personally, I love how season 1 elevated the material and used the different space allowed in a visual medium, in the storytelling medium of television to like widen things out and deepen certain things. and how it used your disconnection with the characters, because you play as Joel, you play as Ellie, so you experience things differently, to allow that perspective to like move around to different characters, to NPCs like Bill, who you just encounter and never really know anything about in the game. And so for me, that's what takes this show up a notch and makes it different than, every other post-apocalyptic kind of road trip / zombie apocalypse movie that's out there, of which there are many, many, many. And it helps it avoid, for me, one of the big, I tuned out on The Walking Dead, not just because of the story, because I started to feel like this is just kind of like wish fulfillment for people like who hope that a civil war breaks out so they can like kill their neighbors.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's just like people who want to be like, oh, I think I could be a warlord like in Tulsa, like after civilization falls, like people who just want to cosplay in that kind of headspace. And the Last of Us never does that. It's or at least it does it a little more this season, but it's still like this human story about life and about how important life is and about trying to rebuild society in some kind of better, more just version, as they're doing in Jackson. That's the thing that I really respond to. So I think the show, again, I can really see how if you weren't aware of the game, you might be enjoying it more than if you had you'd played a lot of hours in The Last of Us 2.
I would say I feel like you pretty much summed up how I feel, Jason. Like, no surprise, we always agree. But like, I will say I do think something that season 1 was so incredible at was taking the vibe of the game, or kind of the feeling of playing the game, and translating it while also expanding our understanding of the world and our understanding of the world building and our understanding of the actions of the characters. Like the finale, we've talked a lot about how that kind of makes a pretty direct statement on the more ambiguous ending of the game, where you are kind of left to feel, how do you feel about Joel after the game? And the end of the first season, they did such a great job making it this kind of terrifying, realistic, like mass murder. And I think that this season they're doing a little bit more direct adaptation of beats from the game, which I do feel like was not as much of a point in the first season, aside from like it is an adaptation. But yeah, for me, I have the same feeling. I'm also interested, let's go to a quick break, but afterwards I'm interested to talk to you guys about like the length of the season, the way they're doing storytelling, because I think that does impact it.
And we're back.
Hey.
Let's talk about, so only 7 episodes for The Last of Us season 2. It feels short. I mean, season 1 was 9. That felt short as well. To me, anything less than 10 feels like not a full season of TV, especially if it's an hour drama. How do you all feel about 7 episodes? And how do you feel about the pacing thus far? Like, are you looking ahead and thinking, oh man, I wonder how they can land this thing in 3 more episodes? Joelle, let's start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little insider baseball, but like I've known for a while that episode 6 is our standalone flashback episode. The end of episode 5 sort of tips you off to where we're going there. And I feel like it's hard, right? Because, okay, in episode 5, we get the stalkers in one of the genuinely such a horrifying scene, which brought me back to episode 1 with the first encounter with the stalker, which was a highlight of the season so far for me. Like, these horror element moments that we're getting into are spookier than they previously were. There's something terrifying about a horde of zombies. Oh gosh, there's so many of them. That's really challenging. Versus a predator situation where you're like, oh, I'm being hunted now. Flipping the script in that way and then sort of pairing that with this fear of losing people, or really more an examination of what is it to let go? Like, how does that happen? When is it, quote, successful, and what does it cost, and what are the sacrifices being made, is intriguing. And yet I feel they haven't gone very far with it. I still feel like we're at the introduction of it, the introduction of these thoughts. And so therefore I'm kind of, Yes, I don't love the pacing of the show. It's been a struggle to get through, in that I feel like I'm always looking for more. But that being said, I've never wanted to not watch the series. I'm like intrigued and invested in the next happenings. I need to know. The Ellie and Dina thing is it's terrifying to me, because I'm like, when is the explosion going to happen? At some point, Ellie has to turn to Dina and be like, part of this is your fault. Like, you messed up. Like, I just feel like there must be a resentment somewhere, and we're not quite getting there. Maybe we're getting it a little bit with their not boyfriend / best friend kind of situation jumping back into the picture. But their emotional journey has been one of like, we're besties and we understand each other and we're moving forward. And every time Ellie runs into a situation where you should not be doing this, Dina doesn't. She's like, I'm with you. I 100% understand you, and so therefore the
I would love a
friction
little
that
bit more
Joel
friction
that Ellie and Joel had that really drove season 1 is not here.
That's a great point, Joelle, because I think that is, I'm realizing something I've been reacting to too, is I think Dina's an incredible character, and I just want more of her. And I think part of what I feel like I'm missing is that complexity, that tension. We just found out, or she just found out, that Ellie has been lying to her about a thing the whole time they've known each other, and that seems to be not a problem at all. Where is that tension, and will it ever emerge? I think is a good question.
I also think that the reason I think it feels tangible that we're missing it is because they touch on it when Ellie and Dina come back together, and Dina kind of reveals what she learned and who killed Joel. And there is a moment where you kind of get like, Ellie is the Joel now and Dina is the kind of young, like, let's talk about it. Yeah. But I feel like they haven't kept up that dynamic, which I would have liked to see go a little bit longer.
Yeah, it's tricky too, because it's almost become Dina's mission. Ellie would have gotten like 500 yards outside of Jackson before she got murked. She had no food and bad shoes and like
no maps,
just bullets, and no horse. Like, she would have just been walking. So to see Dina take over to this level has been really fun. But to your point, I do wish there was more to that relationship than just Dina activating this mission in all the ways that Ellie can't.
Aaron, without knowing kind of where it's going in the same way, do you feel, us being 5 episodes in, does it feel like it's going to be hard for them to wrap up this season in 2 episodes, or does it just feel like you're excited to see whatever comes next?
I think I'm just excited to see what comes next, because I know there's going to be another season, and I don't logically know where. I assume this one is going to end with some confrontation between Ellie and Abby, and I know this isn't a spoiler, but I know that Abby is a playable character in the second game. And so that is fascinating to me. Like, they did that so well, I thought, in episode 2, and you talked about this in the recap, where we follow Abby for a large part of that episode, and we see her in danger, running from the zombies, and we feel for her, and we sympathize with her until all of a sudden she runs into Joel, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, no, she's out for revenge too, and she's about to do something to one of our main characters. So I don't doubt that they can make us feel for Abby again and make that a compelling storyline. Truly, I don't know what happens when the two of them meet, so that is very fascinating to me. I cannot wait for that. And I think the show has done a really good job of, every time there is an episode or a long chunk of time where I feel like, stuff's not really happening, then all of a sudden we get some major thing. And that is what I think what Joelle is talking about, where like, maybe the pacing is off, but every other episode we get
still hooks you in.
A huge piece of candy
1000%.
that we love.
Let me ask you this: oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. So I'm really enjoying that part of it.
I wanted to ask you, Carmen and Aaron, as non-game players, because I think one of the critiques I've seen from the game-centric audience who are a little disappointed in the show is like, why did they nerf Ellie this much? So by the time you're at this point in the story in the game as Ellie, you've probably killed, I don't know,
1,000 people or something.
Yeah, no, but like not 1,000, but like 50, maybe 50 people, maybe 30.
But including season 1, I mean, it's game 1. I think maybe
well,
we're
just
up to
on
100.
the mission, just on the mission, just going to Seattle, leaving Jackson. Maybe you've killed 30, 40 people or something.
It's a lot of people.
To me, to put that on the screen is to make this show a completely different show than it was established as in season. Like, now you're watching John Wick or something,
Right.
Because that's
Exactly.
crazy, right?
Yeah.
But like, how would you respond to that? Seeing a game accurate Ellie light out from Jackson with another 19-year-old, and then like kill, I don't know, like 20 WLF members on the trot after they get caught up in the former news offices or whatever.
I mean, personally, that wouldn't work for me in terms of like
Yeah, okay.
realistic storytelling. I would just be like, okay, this is absolutely ridiculous, And so obviously, I think what maybe would people would respond better to is if maybe the writing of Ellie, and you guys have talked about this many times, like this has been brought up, but maybe if the writing of Ellie and Dina was just a little bit more in depth and a little bit more like, I feel like they could be providing, as you said, they could level it up for the show by adding like an additional emotional layer to Ellie and Dina that we already haven't gotten in the video game. So I just don't think making it more like the video game in that sense is going to be a realistic route for telling
we've
the
talked
story.
a lot
Yeah.
about the logic of the show and what the show establishes in the first season and the opening episodes of this season, and I just don't think there's any way that them going out there and like just like lighting everyone up and like
I still think she's kicking ass though.
She's
kicking
still
ass.
kicking ass.
Is absolutely
That's
kicking
the funny
ass.
thing. Like
Yeah.
she
Absolutely.
keeps surviving. I also think something interesting is like they kind of replaced her like ability to kill now with her ability to survive. Like she
Yeah.
is constantly
is
getting bitten.
a strategy.
I think. Yeah,
and I
smarter.
think that is interesting. Aaron, how would that kind of tone shift work for you?
Game
I mean,
accurate Ellie.
Yeah, I think Carmen said a really appropriate thing. Carmen said level up. And like in video games, we are trained to watch our main character or our playable character level up as they go through harder and harder challenges and fight harder and harder enemies, and therefore you trust that they can take on the boss or the huge situation when that happens. And that doesn't really happen in screen because every superhero movie has one moment when the hero realizes their power and powers up or reaches their full potential. They don't have the time to do that 6 times and like change your class and multi-class over here and learn a new skill. That's a video game thing. So I totally get that they would not be able to do that in the show. I don't know how he would write it differently to be maybe more successful than it is now, but
I also think the connection of like is somebody badass because they've like killed a bunch of people. Maybe that's
Right.
something in the American consciousness we should like consider anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a cool thing that they're not going that route, to
Right.
show that. I mean,
Because
she did just kill someone with a pipe.
As we
If you
said,
want to murder,
stealthing and survival, that is a strategy, just as going guns a-blazing is a
is.
strategy. So it's like I would think maybe if they had drawn more comparisons to how, and they have done this a little bit, but if they had emphasized it more, if they had emphasized more about how Ellie is kind of becoming more like Joel, I think if they kind of leaned into that a little bit more, it might help too.
Let's do a quick ranking of zombified enemies.
yeah.
Where
'cause
do
we
you
get
put-
back. We get back
Where do
to
you
the
put
scary-
cordyceps infected in terms of like the canon of all time zombies or undead monsters? So like, the Chitauri, the White Walkers, the Walking Dead zombies, etc. Where do you put cordyceps?
Infected. Okay. I will say this first. The spore situation of it all elevates it.
Yeah.
But
I
when
agree.
we get to
I
episode
concur.
5
I
and the
completely
spores,
agree.
I'm like probably just a little bit below White Walkers. They're
no.
cool. The design element is nice.
Like-
They're creepy. The fact that they can sense you from far away is a really cool feature. Not all zombies have. You have to be quiet usually, but this one is like, if you touch me in a forest 100 miles away, I know you're there and I will send dreams to you. That's fucking crazy. But now I will keep you alive to the point where I was like, are they conscious at all?
Yes,
Are they
this is
trapped
my-
in their
and I
body?
think
This
this
is so scary.
I'm saying, like, if you're ranking them, like, fear-wise, I think for me, this is the scariest version because especially recency bias with episode 5, but that notion of not just how terrifying a stalker or a bloater or any of the different versions of the cordyceps zombies that we get, but just also like the horror of being infected, of transforming. There's quite a cosmic horror element to the kind of like, you are part of the hive mind, like you are being built into the wall and the fungus is growing on you. Like that is scarier to me than the White Walker. Like the White Walker's gonna just come up to me and be like, oh, I'm gonna stab you because I'm taking over the Seven Kingdoms. Like it's like a famous English actor. I'm like, okay, but I think I'm scared of a running zombie, like a 28 days later kind of running zombie, but that's like secondary to me. I think these are some of, if not the most horrific zombies we've seen. Carmen, you're a big horror head, so where do these list in your rank?
And you gave me a perfect segue too, because I just watched 28 Days Later this weekend.
Nice.
And I think it might be recency bias, but here is my ranking.
Okay.
I've got to say, it's got to be the rage virus is the number one most scary thing to me.
Ooh.
I'm sorry.
Agreed.
That is so scary, because first movie where they're fast zombies, and they're also acknowledging the fact that the virus is transmitted through blood. Second would be, I would definitely say the cordyceps zombies. They're terrifying. I like that they are varied. There's like different types that they can manifest as. And so I would be scared of a stalker. I don't think I would be as scared of like just one of like the regular droning ones. You know what I mean?
Okay.
You think you could take
then-
those?
You could take a clicker.
Yeah, I could take a clicker. A
Okay, I
third,
believe you.
yeah, a third in the ranking for me would be, and this one's controversial because they're kind of vampires and zombies, but the strain. I have to.
Oh,
like,
that's
say.
so
Ooh,
scary.
that's a good pull,
Yeah.
though.
That's
Yeah.
a
That's
deep
good.
pull,
That's
and I
good.
love
Yeah.
it. That's a deep pull, and I love
They're
it.
terrifying.
Aaron, you're not a horror guy. So are these just like the scariest zombies you've ever seen, or do you have other zombie knowledge?
I think it's a shame we're not putting the White Walkers first because they have Viserion. So you can have as many
Yeah.
land-based
Thank you,
zombies
Aaron.
as you
They
want.
do have
That's true.
They do have an
If-
ice. They do have an
Yeah.
ice dragon.
Yeah.
Second, I would say would be Infected, and I think third would be World War Z, where they like climb onto themselves and
yeah.
go up walls. That's terrifying
Yeah.
to me.
I'm
Like,
gonna.
But all you have to do is get
all
the
right.
flu.
Just get the
Yeah,
flu.
that's true. Yeah, they figured that out. Okay, so let me see. Let me do. My ranking would be. I actually think cordyceps might be the scariest because of the spore thing. Like the blood, the rage infected. Theoretically, because it moves, so the infection happens like within 30 seconds of like a blood to blood event. I think theoretically, like it could burn out quicker. Like there's very little chance of, oh my God, this guy I'm in the room with is infected. Like you would know right away. So
Yeah,
like,
true,
you're
true.
cutting off those kind of events where somebody who's like mildly infected develops the infection over the course of like a day, and in that time infects everybody in your town or fortified village or whatever. So I think the spores make it scarier. I also think that the rage zombies, it's like they're just like regular people who are driven completely insane by this virus. So when winter comes, when the seasons change, like they'll just die.
Jason's like,
Hopefully.
they don't get
They'll just-
cold.
Yeah,
They'll
they'll
freeze.
die. They'll just die out.
Just die.
Just let them die, you know?
That's-
Whereas,
they're evolving.
as we've seen with the cordyceps, they have other kind of survival strategies, and then the big boss ones just keep going. And so I think I would put cordyceps at the top, ahead of Rage, ahead of World War Z movie version, and certainly ahead of all of the
You're kind of shambling.
the Night of the Living
stumbling.
Dead, Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead style shambling hordes, which are like, honestly, who cares? It's
Yeah,
not
like
a big deal.
we could take. them.
Yeah, it's like I'm
We
like
played-
walking away
we
from
played
them.
Video games. Okay,
I need a machine gun and a quick walk, and we're good.
right? I'm like, we've seen the Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead, surprisingly good. But yeah, Aaron and Jason, just before we go to another ad break, as the musicians, I need you guys to talk about Ellie's guitar. What's going on with the guitar playing? Is Bella playing the guitar? Aaron, your thoughts?
Okay, so Bella is playing a guitar. Bella is not playing the guitar part that is in the recording. And I went back and rewatched the performance. Bella is actually playing, I believe, the same chords, but it is a very finger-picked song where there is inside baseball, there's use of fingers as well as thumb. Bella is only using thumb to basically strum out the root note and the 5 of each chord. She's changing chords at the right time, and I believe that they're playing the structure of the song correctly, and they just had to learn it that way and just couldn't do it live on screen. I don't know if they're the ones playing it in the recording or not. They're not playing that part of the guitar.
This is what you come to
So
X-Ray Vision
helpful.
for.
Right.
The
Absolutely.
in-depth musical.
I know this is. I found this controversy somewhat weird. I guess based around the fact that Mason is like, oh no, that's them. That's them playing it. But again, I think that's kind of not. It's clearly not all the way accurate because this is. I don't think they did that live on set. I think
In a studio.
This
not
is a
Wicked.
studio record. They
It's not
recorded it
Wicked.
in a studio, right? And then ADR'd it on top of the live performance on the set, which is totally fine. But the way that comment, I think,
then
is
talked
phrased
about
leads
it.
you to believe that, like, yeah, on the day we rolled camera and
They were just
they
picking.
just went and we just taped it and we took like the best version. Like that didn't happen. They recorded
Also,
it in the studio and they
wouldn't
dropped
really
it in.
be
That's
fair
fine.
to ask Bella to do that if that's not something they're already doing. And Bella did a great job.
I agree.
Did a great job. But I'm glad that the guitar lovers and the musicians were able to establish that as it has been a conversation piece.
Yeah.
Let's go to a message from our sponsors and we'll be right back. And we're back.
And we're back. Finally, okay, Pedro Pascal. There's been he left us, as I think gamers expected to leave us by episode
And
2.
non-gamers did not expect, as the
Non-gamers
messages,
did
the
not
messages
expect.
in my WhatsApp told me when
There was
everyone I knew watched it.
It
in
was
England.
a nigh Ned Stark death kind of impact for this show, for the non-game players. How do you think the show's going without him thus far? Joelle, let's start with you.
Well, I think that there was a stronger understanding of who that character was, what made him
Great way to put it.
interesting. And because you start with such a singular focus, Joel's world was his daughter was taken, the whole world burned, but he's still not over the initial loss of his daughter. Here comes another person who can sort of fill that void. He will do anything to protect her. That is a very straightforward line. You understand fully from the top, like, what's going on. Where I'm at with Ellie is, like, Ellie survived a bunch of loss. Her worst fear came true, and now she's lost, which is interesting, but it's challenging to connect to that when the feeling of that loss feels very distant. And by this I mean, yes, she's like, okay, I'm going to go avenge my father. I will stop at nothing. Great. Do you push other people away when you do that? Typically that's the thing that happens when you become singularly focused. You're not as focused on the health and of everybody else. Typically that has an alienating effect. I think too, when you're keeping a lot of secrets, when they start to be revealed, there's like a vulnerability of exposure that causes people to do a whole slew of different types of things depending on who they are and where they're at. But we're not really seeing, like, you feel
No.
unraveled if your job has been to protect these secrets and now they're out. And I just feel like I don't feel Ellie sliding. I feel like, oh, Ellie's got a girlfriend now. That's awesome. They seem to really like each other. And mission is going according to plan, mostly. Almost died, but thank God he was here. He just swooped right in, saved them. That was great.
Jesse Ex Machina. Love to see
Yeah,
him.
and because of that, it's sort of, you're just like, well, I'm lost now, and I don't have a good villain to fall back on, which is typically really helpful. It's not something the show has needed in the past, but I just think if you're going to introduce Jeffrey Wright and he's going to be that great, maybe he's the focus for a little bit. Like, maybe he's the counterweight, too. I think a strong counterweight to what Ellie is doing consistently might have also been a great, like, point for the show to pivot off of. So I think we are feeling the absence of Joel. That being said, I am invested in the story of Ellie, and I think, and with the understanding that I also really liked about the show is that it feels like the show has always been The Last of Us, and the us was vital because we were constantly spinning off into these other stories, and that had become so interesting. And what I'm thinking about now is those stories are wrapped up really quickly. So you understand the importance and what the us you were visiting was trying to tell you about the world, because you were getting
That's
a
a good
beginning,
point.
middle, end really quick. And
Yeah.
right now, I don't know what's going on with Isaac. I saw him have a turn, but I don't know where it's going. And so, yeah, I think without those like more vignetted sort of feeling for the pacing, and without Joel to sort of ground you in, oh my God, like he's like, we lived his biggest fear with him. We lived Ellie's too. But I don't know, something about like where it's positioned in the show, like that's where we start. We see the before and after very clearly. It's just it feels a little less meaningful in its direction than when we had Joel.
I would also say it's harder, I think, for them to make it as obviously emotionally stark because Ellie now has the community of Jackson Hole. And we know that's not the same, but I do think that it feels a little less urgent in the way that they've presented
Right,
it.
because
or
she
that her
chose to
fear-
leave a safe space when Joel had no safe space to return to. It was totally blown up. That's a great point, Rosie.
Also, as well, I will say, my personal feeling about this, we talked about it a lot, but in listening to our conversation, talk to us, I also do think that, ironically, a little more of the way that the game told the story, in that we were in Abby's perspective for a longer time. I think that
I
is
do miss
missing
that a little
from
bit.
this episode.
The counterweight, yes.
I
Abby
want to
should have been it. That's 100%.
I want to know about. I think an opening,
Yeah.
you could have had an Abby bottle episode. You could have had something like that, and I think it would have made it less stark when we lost Pedro. But also, I just want to say, Pedro Pascal is like a fucking generational talent, and I do also think this was always going to be an issue for the show. And it's not that Bella isn't or Isabella McCard isn't, because they are both going to do incredible things and already are doing incredible things. But it's very hard when, like Carmen said, the show had a deep understanding of who Joel was, and it doesn't necessarily seem to have it for some of the other characters in the same way.
I want to pivot off something you said, Joelle, which I think is really great. It was that this show is called The Last of Us, and it's, I think the way that I perceive that for shows like this, for post-apocalyptic shows, is are our characters going to like give into the primal violence, the nihilism, and have this idea that, well, this is the way the world is now. You're allowed to kill people and murder people and take their stuff, and you know the level by which you could accelerate to like fatal violence is like actually pretty low, and that makes sense in this world. Or are you going to try to, and this is what I feel like The Last of Us is what makes it so good, is are you going to try to maintain some of the things that were actually good about the world that is now gone? Like about empathy, about valuing people's lives, about like not killing people just because you disagree with them, you know, or because you think they might pose a threat to you. And it's that I feel like elevates this show, and what I feel like, and even though I never really thought about it before, I've always kind of perceived The Last of Us as meaning that. Like, how do we hold on to this little island of community, of you know, equality in a world that is completely fallen? How do we not become whatever they're doing in Seattle on either side? You know, how do we not do that? And when the show holds that part of it up, I think it's exceptional. And I think I'm glad you brought that up, Joel, because I hadn't really thought about it in those terms before.
I had to fight a friend a lot about whether A Long Time belonged in the series or not. They were adamant that it didn't. And I was like, the show is called The Last of Us. We need to see the us. Who are the us? Who are we protecting? What are we saving? It's just like when I'm watching Star Wars back in the day when I was like, we're always up here with the high people. We're with low people. Now we have Andor. Stay with the low people.
Yeah.
That's where the stories are good. What did you think, Carmen, about like just where the show is good? Do you feel like the direction of it? Do you feel like you know where it's going? Are you good with where it's at?
I will say this season, I'm having hope that, you know, the third season will kind of pick up its pace again and kind of figure out some of these kinks, because for me, this second season, it feels like a little bit of like an in-between kind of
Truncated kind of.
Yes.
1.5 almost. Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know if this is like its own season in the same way that season 1 was. So I'm still kind of holding out for season 3 and hoping that they'll kind of maybe bring in some female writers, maybe bring in some people to like, you know, tell these more emotional stories and give us more episodes even. So I honestly, like, as you said, Joelle, the most interesting thing for me was like, oh, I want to know more about Isaac. I want to know more about Abby.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pedro
Yes.
Pascal is hot and I love him, but
And we miss
he's
him.
dead now, you know?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
give me more Isaac, give me more Abby, and I really am hoping that they can do something in these last couple of episodes that will just kind of bring it home for me.
Kind of tying all of that together with The Last of Us and what that means, and kind of, I do think you guys will touch on something that for me is like the world building in the first season is so
Yeah.
fantastic, and it is from meeting those different communities, and I feel like that has not been established in the same way for the Scars, for the WLF, and I know the world is expanding, but I do think for me that would have made this season stronger so far if we'd have had a little bit more insight into who these people were, what their view of the world is, why they behave the way they do. That is what makes The Last of Us interesting, and that's what makes great TV storytelling interesting.
Yeah, like if you take that WLF, where the Seraphites are executing the WLF member from episode 5, like when you get to that point in the video game, that's almost it's the introduction for the Seraphites, right?
Yeah.
Like that's pretty much the beginning.
We never got that whole thing
Right.
with them.
And
the
so
kid
that element of horror works, but since we've already been introduced to the fact that they disembowel people with many more bodies in a very horror, it doesn't hit. And because I don't know that WLF member or those Seraphites, I don't have an emotional investment in what they're doing.
we just
and
know
it-
they don't like each other.
Right. And so all that scene really does then is it's like, oh, there's not anywhere safe. Like, and we know the Seraphites run the park, which is not great at the end of episode 5 for us to be at that place in storytelling. So I think just moments like that sort of drag it. But again, there are so many great moments throughout the series. It's still living in like B+ territory for me of like, this is still a fun and engaging space.
No, it's for real. Yeah, I'm solidly B+ as well.
Yeah,
It was
and
just, we were A+
beautifully made,
for a
too.
little while.
We were
Yes,
A+,
yes.
and that
We
was
see
it.
that
I
flip, and we're worried about the child. We're like, please,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
can do A+ work. What's happening?
Yeah.
One of my many nieces and nephews is really into rating things at the moment, and he's very into like S tier rate, S tier.
Oh
Yes.
my God.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
for a while, I think
It was S,
I think the
yeah.
first season was S tier for
I
which
completely
is
agree.
so rare, and I think that's the only reason we're looking at it this way. Is because there's a little bit of something. I think it's the truncated nature of the season, the pacing. It kind of takes me out of the logic of the show, whereas that first season is legit. Just you are on the journey the whole way.
And you even open up with world building in the first season, just with that that kind of like interview section where they're talking about the cordyceps and stuff, and just if they would zoom out a little bit, I think to
That could be really
I sort of miss
interesting.
those moments too.
I do
think
miss
by
those
hopping
moments as well. Yeah.
so far in between different time periods and like how do people receive information that seems far out? How did the scientists' initial reaction to these things? And because we're
Yeah.
not jumping either into other territories. Even like we had that weird stop in season 1 with the indigenous couple where
Yeah.
they were like robbed them for some stuff, and like that was just such an interesting peek into a life, and then we were gone. I
and
miss
to
those
people
little
who
moments.
survived it.
Yeah,
I will say that I think that there is. I understand that this show cannot be 3 hours an episode. That said, I do feel as if those little, download moments. They're exposition starters for sure. But I think you could drop those in through the perspective of Gail or Maria or these other
Exactly.
characters
I
who
was thinking
survived.
immediately.
the
What would-
community of
what would-
Jackson. Yeah.
Where was she when this broke out? What was she doing? Like, what are her memories of the first critical few days of this crisis?
Yes,
I think
Jason.
those things could both widen the world and deepen our connection to the new characters, or the characters who have just been introduced this season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even like someone like Dina, who was obviously
Yes.
very young, but like, what are her
Yeah.
actual memories of this?
And
what
also,
does she
like,
remember?
just outside of maybe like just telling Ellie like this happened, it was bad, you know, like we got to see that a little bit more in season 1, and I do think Gale would have been a great kind of launch pad for that. I love that addition of that character. I also would love to know more about Maria, because I thought she was one of the most interesting
And you have Regina Weasley
adaptations in season 1.
brilliant.
Can I say something too?
Yeah.
That I think has been kind of affecting me this season is like the first season is really about like survival and like finding, you know, your people that you can survive with. And this season has taken a notable turn to being about like revenge
and violence.
And I don't know, but about y'all, but it feels so dumb. Like when you look at like Jackson Hole was great. Why the hell are we going out to kill this? I would just be like, that sucks. She killed my like dad figure, but I am not leaving Jackson Hole.
I also so there was a lot of critique of from people who hadn't played the game, who were like, "This is like a silly revenge plotline, blah blah blah." And I was thinking like, "You don't understand." But now I'm kind of like, also like, you know what? If I was like Tommy, I would have tied Ellie up. Like, you're staying in the house and listen to some fucking aha and get over it for a bit, babe. Because like leaving Jackson
I love
Hole
revenge. I mean, listen. I love revenge, and I do think I love revenge. It's one of the most elemental plot devices we have, right? You know, like, and I think that, I'm a little disappointed in Jackson Hole for not putting other options besides 16 riders, or we don't do anything.
Right.
Like, I think there were things in between. That said, I will, you know, I do think that. The application of revenge and the way that it's both taken over Ellie's life and also doesn't seem to like. It's weird that she's less angry, don't you think?
Yes,
that's what she was saying.
She was so much more angry when Joel was around.
Yeah.
And now she's been consumed by this revenge mission. And doesn't
seems like she's having fun.
And,
she's having a great time.
And the show is sort of like not diagnosing her with anything, but there do seem to be two sides of her, right? Like there is when she gets into these moments of fully in revenge where she can enact this violence, there's a switch. And it's a switch we saw in season 1, which I genuinely loved. Like it was a great flip. I think by not, again, exploring, to me, secrets are such a huge part of like young women's lives. And I think particularly in spaces that are like male dominated as the post-apocalypse would be. And I just think if you had all of this rage and you were falling in love with a person and this person was like, I love you back, you would not want them to see the side of you because it's terrifying and people know it's quote wrong. And therefore, like, I just don't, it goes back to the, like, there's not a lot of tension between Dina and Ellie. I just feel like we're seeing two very different sides of her, but there's no attempt to like showcase how she's hiding or working around.
I was going to say, I think
that.
that's another kind of lack of conflict or friction where there could be something really interesting in Ellie trying to hide that from herself. And I have found, like, I know we spoke about this on the recap, so you can go and listen to me talk about it more. I'm a big Tati Gabrielle fan, so I didn't love like the way that they portrayed Nora's end. I couldn't really root for Ellie doing that. But also I think there's optics issues when you cast like that. But also I also think that there is that flip. It was just, to me, it did still feel like it came out of nowhere in this context because of that lack of friction, because of that kind of lack of, they're having a great time, and then suddenly they're downstairs and they're in the spores and she's just going to beat her to death with a pipe. Like, just leave her there. She's going to die. She's not.
I just think that there's a binariness with Ellie's character where she's completely good in the context that we are comfortable with her being completely good in, with her with Dina, with her on the mission when she's not in the presence of people she needs to kill. And that when she kills, like she killed Nora, she goes to the dark side, but we don't ever feel the presence of that in the rest of her character.
Yes.
You know, and I think there's a kind of unwillingness to complicate her in that way that doesn't exist for other, like, for instance, Abby. It's important that we know her motivations. We could easily see her as just the villain. We have to kill her. She must be stopped. We have to take revenge for this. But despite the fact that we haven't gone that deeply with her, we already understand like her motive. This is her father that was murdered. She found his body. Like she loved him like the way that Ellie loved Joel. And we've established that. But we've also seen the way she acted to her wolves, that she forced basically to go on this 5-year mission of revenge to find this person. And the way she reacted to them, like almost with like a iron hand of like, shut up and fucking do what I say. To inject her with that fucking drug. Yes, I said we weren't going to hurt people. Now we are. What the fuck are you going to do about it? With Ellie, we don't want that to happen. There's almost an allergicness to feeling as if Ellie, and she is, I'm not saying she's forcing Dina to do this, but I'm saying a person in their rational mind would be like, you're pregnant. That's
Let's
it.
just go
We're going home.
Let's turn around.
Yeah.
I mean,
let's turn
regardless even
around.
of the pregnancy, that's an army. And we
Yeah.
have 2 people without weapons to go against
This is
an
crazy.
army. We are
but
going to die.
Yes. But to make that decision, right, is kind of that Abby, like, singular focused, almost obsessive, like, crazed, monomaniacal, like, this bloodlust must be slaked. But there's none of that.
No,
in
because
her.
Dina's
Right.
just like, I want
Yeah.
the revenge too.
They're
Let's
just on a road
go.
trip.
So
You know
that
what I
is,
mean?
and listen, I love it. I love Ellie too, and I love that
Yeah.
she's our hero, and I'm going to follow her to the end of this story. But it does feel a little less complicated.
Yeah. And then we got those complications with Joel too. Like when we think like he could never
Complicated
tell
men.
what's her face
Yeah.
that he was in love with her, even though clearly they had this very long relationship where they had a
Very
certain level
intimate
of dedication to one
relationship.
another.
Yeah.
Even when he's meeting Bill and Frank, like there's a difficulty in connecting. Like he's only really connecting with them over protect. Yes, got that. We have the guns. We need the gates. Perfect. I think with Ellie, we get it's just too little. I think if we knew more about Jackson and saw more people's interactions and how Ellie left them feeling, that we might have a clearer picture of who she is. Because right now, like what we get in the top is like, oh, you're part of this community now. But also these guys are willing to like train with her and are pulling their punches because they care enough about her not to like do real damage. Like it's just not a full picture of her as a person. And I think too, it's been hard. You know, I've heard a lot of people say like it's hard to root for Ellie this season. And here's what I'm really bumping against, and where I feel like the show was like, Joel is absolutely wrong. He killed a doctor in the apocalypse. You're killing health workers in an apocalypse. I don't know if there's a more egregious crime at this point in time than killing somebody who heals. Like that is insane to do. And Joel did it in a moment of like, she's literally going to die. She's right there and she's going to die.
What would you do if that was your child?
And you
That's
still
the
find
question.
the violence abhorrent, and you're still like, this is absolutely wrong. But there is a certain level of like, I sort of understand what's happening here. Whereas Ellie, he's been past. You literally had to heal from a whole injury. You're out here with somebody who's extremely vulnerable, and you're killing doctors. Like, what are we doing? It's just, again, it's just, I'm feeling a little lost. I'm hoping they can land the plane because I really do enjoy this show.
Yeah, 2 episodes left, so we're gonna find out.
Well, coming up on X-Ray Vision, we have our recaps of the final 3 episodes of Andor. Tomorrow, Friday, we'll be back with our roundtable, and this Saturday we're serving up some hot news with a special featurette on the Apple TV Plus series Murderbots. Coming up next, more Star Wars and Mission Impossible, folks. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
X-Ray Vision is hosted by Jason Concepcion
and Rosie Knight.
and is a production of iHeart Podcasts.
Our executive producers are Joelle Monique and Aaron Kaufman.
Our supervising producer is Abu Zafar.
Our producers are Carmen Laurent, Ian Johnson, and Bei Wang.
Our theme song is by Brian Vasquez with alternate theme songs by Aaron Kaufman.
Special thanks to Sol Rubin, Chris Lord, Kenny Goodman, and Heidi, our Discord moderator.